Just a slow, terrible gulp. 16-year-old Eli Carter stood frozen on the bridge, grocery bag slipping from his hand as headlights vanished beneath black water. Winter rain stung his face. The road was empty. No phones. No help. Eli knew that feeling, being alone when seconds mattered. He'd learned it young, after his parents died and the world taught him how quiet emergencies could be. The car bobbed once, then sank nose first. He ran. Shoes skidded on wet concrete as he climbed the guardrail and slid down the embankment. Thorns tore at his jeans. Mud sucked at his boots. The river was already biting cold. But Eli didn't hesitate. He kicked off his shoes and dove. The cold hit him like a fist to the chest, stealing his breath, making his muscles seize. For a moment he couldn't move, couldn't think. The river current pulled at him, trying to drag him downstream, away from the sinking car. But Eli had learned something in his years alone. Pain was temporary. Regret lasted forever. He kicked hard, forcing his body through the numbing water. His lungs already burned. The headlights below were fading, sinking deeper into the murk. He could barely see them now. Two yellow eyes closing slowly, swallowed by darkness. Underwater, everything was chaos. Muddy darkness pressed in from all sides. Silt churned up from the riverbed, making it impossible to see more than a few inches. A door was pressed shut by pressure, the water outside crushing it closed with thousands of pounds of force. Inside, a woman pounded weakly on the glass, her movements slowing with each second. Eli's lungs screamed for air. Black spots danced at the edges of his vision. He had maybe 20 seconds left, maybe less. Her face was pale through the window, eyes wide, breaths coming fast and shallow. Bubbles streamed from her nose as she gulped the last pocket of air trapped against the roof of the car. She saw him. Their eyes locked through the glass, and something passed between them. A desperate, silent plea. "Please, I don't want to die." Eli surfaced once, gasped, the winter air like knives in his throat, then went back down. His fingers were already numb, clumsy. He felt along the muddy riverbed until they closed around a rock the size of his fist. Rough, heavy, perfect. He positioned himself and swung. The first impact barely scratched the glass. The second made a small chip. Water resistance slowed every movement, made every action feel like pushing through honey. His muscles trembled with cold and exhaustion. The woman inside wasn't moving anymore, just floating, eyes half closed, body limp against the seatbelt. No, 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 no. Eli swung again, and again. Each impact sent shock waves up his arm. His vision was narrowing to a tunnel. His body was shutting down, the cold reaching his core now, slowing his heart, clouding his thoughts. The glass finally spiderwebbed on the 7th hit. On the 8th it gave. Water rushed in through the broken window with terrible force, filling the car completely in seconds. The sudden flood nearly tore the woman from her seat, but the seatbelt held her. Eli reached through the jagged opening, felt glass slice across his forearm, warm blood mixing with cold water. He didn't have time to feel it. His pocket knife, the one his father gave him before the accident, the one he'd carried for 8 years, was slippery in his frozen fingers. He fumbled it once, twice, nearly dropped it into the darkness below. His lungs were on fire now. His body was begging him to breathe, to open his mouth and inhale even though there was only water here. The seatbelt was tough, designed to survive crashes. Eli sawed at it desperately, the blade catching on the woven fibers. 5 seconds. 10. The woman's hair floated around her face like seaweed. Her lips were blue. The belt finally snapped. Eli wrapped an arm around her chest, under her arms, the way he'd seen in a CPR video once. She was heavier than he expected, dead weight, her body completely limp. He kicked for the surface with everything he had left, his free arm clawing through the water, legs pumping even though he could barely feel them anymore. The light above seemed impossibly far away. His vision was going gray. His movements were getting slower. The surface was right there. He could see it rippling above him, but his body was giving up. Just a little further. Just a little more. His head broke through first, then hers. Eli gasped, dragging in air that hurt so much it felt like breathing glass. The woman wasn't breathing at all. Getting to shore took forever. The current fought him, pulling them sideways, trying to separate them. Eli's arms had no strength left. Twice he went under, swallowing river water, choking. Twice he forced himself back up. His feet finally found mud. Then rocks. Then grass. He dragged her onto the embankment and collapsed beside her. Chest heaving, muscles screaming. For a moment, he couldn't do anything but lie there, shaking so hard his teeth rattled. But the woman still wasn't breathing. Eli rolled her onto her side. Water poured from her mouth, dark and full of silt. He remembered something from health class, from a video he'd barely paid attention to, and tilted her head back, cleared her airway with trembling fingers. He started chest compressions. 1, 2, 3. His arms were shaking so badly he could barely maintain pressure. He'd never felt this exhausted in his life. Every push took everything he had. 15 compressions. Breathe. 15 more. Breathe. Please. Please don't be dead. Not after everything. On the third cycle, she convulsed. Water erupted from her throat. She rolled to her side, coughing violently, her whole body racked with spasms. Eli nearly cried with relief. She coughed for a full minute, bringing up what seemed like half the river. When she finally stopped, she was shaking so violently her teeth clacked together. Her lips were still blue. Her skin was gray. Hypothermia. Eli knew the signs. He'd read about it once in a book about survival. She needed to get warm. Now. He stripped off his jacket with numb fingers and wrapped it around her shoulders, even though it was soaked through. He pulled her against him, holding her upright, sharing what little body heat he had left. His own teeth were chattering so hard he could barely form words. "Stay with me," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Just stay. Help is coming. Just stay awake." She looked at him through glassy eyes. Really looked, and managed a cracked smile through blue lips. "You saved me," she said, each word an effort. I'm a sister." Eli didn't understand. His brain was too foggy, too cold, too exhausted to process anything beyond keeping her conscious. What? But she'd already slipped into unconsciousness. The next hour was the longest of Eli's life. He'd managed to climb back up the embankment, half carrying, half dragging the woman. His legs barely worked. His vision kept going dark at the edges. But he made it to the road. The bridge was still empty. No cars. No help. The rain kept falling, cold and relentless. Eli laid the woman down on the wet pavement, kept his jacket wrapped around her, and ran. His legs felt like lead. Each step sent jolts of pain through his frozen feet. But there was a gas station half a mile up the road. He remembered passing it on his walk. He ran like his life depended on it. Like her life depended on it. The clerk at the gas station took one look at him. Soaking wet, covered in mud and blood, shaking violently, and called 911 before Eli could even speak. The paramedics said he saved her twice. Once in the water, once on the shore. They wrapped them both in thermal blankets that crinkled like aluminum foil. They checked vitals, shone lights in eyes, asked questions Eli could barely answer. His core temperature was dangerously low. 89 degrees. They said he'd been minutes away from losing consciousness himself. In the ambulance, Eli finally saw what the woman had meant. A leather vest lay draped over her arm, somehow still with her through everything. On the back, in bold letters and patches, Hell's Angels MC. Eli stared at it, not quite understanding. The paramedic, a kind-faced woman with graying hair, followed his gaze and smiled. "That's Maria Gonzalez," she said quietly. "She's well known around here. Does a lot of charity work with the club. Toy drives, food banks, that sort of thing." "I didn't know," Eli said. His voice sounded strange, hoarse and distant. "She knows now," the paramedic said. "What you did. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've never seen anything like it." Eli closed his eyes. The exhaustion was catching up to him now, pulling him under like the river had tried to do. His last thought before sleep took him was simple: she's alive. That's all that matters. Eli spent 2 days in the hospital recovering from hypothermia and exhaustion. They treated the cuts on his arm, pumped him full of warm fluids, monitored his heart. The whole time, nurses and doctors kept stopping by his room, just to shake his hand or say thank you. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt tired and cold even under 3 heated blankets. On the second day, a social worker came to see him, Mrs. Patterson. She'd been his caseworker since his parents died. Since the drunk driver ran the red light and took them both in an instant. She'd found him his current placement, a group home on the west side of town. It wasn't bad as group homes went. But it wasn't home. Eli, she said, sitting on the edge of his hospital bed, what you did was incredibly brave. And incredibly stupid. He managed a weak smile. I know. You could have died. I know. She was quiet for a moment, then squeezed his hand. Your parents would have been proud. That was when Eli finally cried. He didn't know it yet, but word was already spreading. In clubhouses across 3 states, phones were ringing. Messages were being passed. The story was being told and retold. A 16-year-old kid dove into a frozen river and saved one of their own. No hesitation. No thought for himself. In the culture of the Hells Angels, loyalty meant everything. Family meant everything. And this kid, this orphaned kid who had nothing, had treated Maria like she was his own blood. They didn't forget things like that. Eli was discharged on a Friday afternoon. Mrs. Patterson drove him back to the group home. He stared out the window the whole way, watching the gray winter landscape roll by. The river looked different now in daylight. Smaller, less threatening. He wondered if he'd ever be able to look at it the same way. When they pulled up to the group home, Eli noticed something odd. The other kids were all crowded at the windows, staring out at the street. Their eyes were wide. What's going on? Eli asked. Mrs. Patterson's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She was staring too. Eli followed her gaze. The street was lined with motorcycles. Not just a few. Dozens. Hundreds, maybe. Harleys and choppers and custom bikes. Chrome gleaming even in the gray light. They stretched down the block as far as he could see, perfectly spaced, engines silent. Men and women stood beside them, all wearing leather vests, patches displaying their chapters, their ranks, their history. Some had gray beards down to their chests. Some had arms covered in tattoos. All of them stood at attention, waiting. Oh my God, Mrs. Patterson whispered. A low thunder began. One engine, then another, then hundreds more, all rumbling to life at once. The sound shook the air, rattled windows, set off car alarms down the street. The other kids in the group home were pressed against the glass now, mouths open. Eli stepped out of the car on shaking legs. The engines cut. In the sudden silence, a woman stepped forward. Maria. She looked different now. Healthy color in her cheeks, steady on her feet, alive in a way she hadn't been the last time he saw her. She walked straight to Eli and took both his hands in hers. This is family, she said, her voice breaking. Tears streamed down her face. And family remembers. Around them, the bikers removed their helmets. Some wiped their eyes. Many wept openly. These were men who'd seen wars, prisons, and funerals. Men who'd lived hard lives and survived harder times. And here they were, 250 strong, crying for a kid they'd never met. Maria released one of his hands and turned to address the crowd. This boy, Eli Carter, he didn't know me, didn't know what I was, didn't know if I was worth saving. He just saw someone who needed help, and he dove into a frozen river to give it. Her voice rang out clear and strong. He gave everything, asked for nothing. That's the truest kind of courage. The bikers nodded. Some called out in agreement. So we're here to say thank you, Maria continued, and to make sure this kid knows he's not alone anymore. They didn't give speeches after that. They didn't make promises they couldn't keep. They gave him something better, a future. One of the bikers stepped forward. a massive man with a scarred face and kind eyes. He introduced himself as Marcus, the chapter president. He handed Eli an envelope. Inside were scholarship papers. Full ride to any state university. Funded by the club's charity foundation. 4 years, tuition and books covered. Another biker, a woman named Sarah with silver hair and a gentle smile, handed him keys. Apartment near your school, she said. Already paid for. Furnished. It's yours as long as you need it. A third biker pressed a phone into his hand. Our numbers are already programmed in, he said gruffly. You need anything, and I mean anything you call. Someone will answer. Day or night. Eli stared at the gifts in his hands. At the faces surrounding him. At Maria, who was still crying, still smiling. I don't understand, he said. Why? Marcus put a heavy hand on his shoulder. Because you're one of us now. Because what you did, that's what family does. And we take care of our own. I'm not, Eli started. You are, Maria interrupted firmly. You proved it when you dove into that river. Some people go their whole lives and never show that kind of courage. That kind of heart. You're 16 and you've already shown us who you are. She pulled him into a hug. Eli stood stiff for a moment, then collapsed into it, his own tears finally coming. He'd spent 8 years being strong. 8 years not letting anyone see him break. 8 years alone. He didn't have to be strong anymore. The bikers didn't rush him. They stood in silence, bearing witness, letting him cry. When he finally pulled back, Maria wiped his face with her sleeve like a mother would. Thank you, Eli whispered. Felt inadequate, too small for what he was feeling. Thank you, she said, for my life, for this moment, for reminding us what matters. As the engines finally roared to life, Eli stood straighter than he ever had. The other kids from the group home had come outside now, standing on the lawn, watching in awe. Mrs. Patterson stood beside Eli, tears streaming down her own face. This is extraordinary, she said. In all my years, I've never seen anything like this. The bikers began to move, a slow procession down the street. But they didn't leave all at once. Each one stopped as they passed Eli. Some shook his hand. Some hugged him. Some just nodded, respect clear in their eyes. A few pressed more gifts into his hands. Cash, gift cards, a leather jacket that fit him perfectly. One old biker, he had to be in his 70s with a white beard and eyes that had seen everything, stopped his bike and looked at Eli for a long moment. I pulled 3 men out of a fire in Vietnam, he said quietly. Got medals for it. But what you did, kid? In that freezing water with no training, no backup, no guarantee you'd make it out. He shook his head. That's the bravest thing I've ever heard of. You remember that. When things get hard, when you doubt yourself, you remember you're the kind of person who dives into frozen rivers to save strangers. That's who you are. He pressed something into Eli's hand. A medallion worn smooth with age. That's from my fire squad. 40 years I carried it. It's yours now. Before Eli could respond, the old biker kick-started his engine and rolled away. When the last motorcycle disappeared around the corner, the street fell silent. The other kids rushed Eli, asking a million questions at once, wanting to touch the jacket, see the keys, hear the story. Eli answered as best he could, but his mind was elsewhere. For the first time since becoming an orphan, he wasn't alone. That night, lying in his bed at the group home, Eli pulled out the envelope again, read through the scholarship papers, looked at the apartment address, touched the phone with all those numbers programmed in. A future. They'd given him a future. He thought about his parents, about how proud they'd have been. Not of the rescue, though they would have been proud of that too, but of the person he'd become. Someone who helped. Someone who cared. Someone who didn't walk away when it mattered. I miss you, he whispered into the darkness. But I think I'm going to be okay. And the river, silent witness to it all, kept flowing. Carried no memory of that night. No record of the car that sank into its depths, or the boy who dove in after it. No trace of the terror or the courage or the desperate fight for life. But Eli would remember. Every time he crossed that bridge, every time he saw dark water, every time he felt the cold, he would remember the weight of a life in his arms, the burn of exhausted muscles, the taste of fear, and he would remember the warmth that came after, the family that found him, the future that opened up. The river kept its secret, but Eli kept something better. He kept the knowledge that when the moment came, when everything hung in the balance and he had to choose between safety and sacrifice, he chose right, and that would matter for the rest of his life. For the first time since his parents died, Eli Carter fell asleep smiling. If stories like this remind you that heroes come from the most unexpected places, subscribe to the channel. More real stories of courage, kindness, and second chances are coming.